Hey, did you know it's Halloween? I mean, it's not the 31st yet, but it's October, which is basically Halloween nowadays. And as per peer pressure, that means it's time we talk about ghost-type Pokemon. And we've had this planned all year. Today, let's go over every ghost-type Pokemon move and explain what it is, what it do, and maybe even how it do. And it might get a little weird this time because, well, there is so little actual science or even logic to base these on. I mean, here's a science textbook. What does it say about ghosts? No. Well, alrighty then, let's get started.
Boo!
Did I get ya? Well, that's the basis of the move Astonish. The user attacks the target while shouting in a startling fashion. This may also make the target flinch. A tradition of ghosts, really. I mean, it's what they do. You can't blame them. But wow, are they spooky. They quite literally do their opponent a jump scare, which causes them to flinch. Typically, you jump when you get scared because of a hormonal response that has to do with your fight or flight response. Adrenaline gets pumped into your muscles and they contract, basically jump-starting your body, which is also why you see in plenty of jump scare videos, the victim sometimes actually will bolt away or straight up just punch whatever happens to scare them. Flight or fight, right? In Pokemon though, it basically causes the opponent to flinch and waste a turn. They gotta take the time to calm down and focus on the battle at hand again. With Confuse Ray, the target is exposed to a Sinister Ray that triggers confusion. Now at a glance you might think,
Wait, this isn't a psychic move?
and while I'd be inclined to agree, the psychic move Confusion is basically the same as the Ghost's move, but more refined, as theirs does actual psychic damage to the opponent's mind, whereas the Ghost's, well, it doesn't do damage, but it will always leave the opponent confused at least, and it makes some sense. It is a ray of concentrated confusion after all, but it still begs the question, why do ghosts have this power? It's definitely a psychic thing at first glance. You know, messing with the old noggin. Well, it turns out the Confusion name is only its English name. In Japanese, the name of this move is Eerie Light, which is much more reasonable. But why would an Eerie Light confuse you? We just don't get it, but that's why I gotta tell you. The Eerie Light is in reference to dim light, typically moonlight, and our human brains love to be alive, so they are scared of stuff. So they make up monsters in the dark. We just don't know if they exist, but that shuffle in the dark bushes, the slight movement in the shadows you think you saw, what if it is a beastly monster trying to kill you? The light is so dim, it's eerie. What even is real anymore? How confusing? Heck, most animals have this. Safety is important, and it's better to be scared of perceived danger that isn't real than to be dead because you thought the real danger was fake. Know what I mean? Also, a lot of horror stories, especially when you start dealing with like extraplanar, higher dimension, eldritch beast stuff, a lot of them feature eerie floating lights as the monster because we simply cannot perceive them because they're so supernatural, extra dimensional, or whatever. So it's confusing. You look at them, your brain just farted, it doesn't know what's going on, you're confused. Now, a much more straightforward move is Curse. That was sarcasm. Curse is a move that works differently for ghost-type Pokemon. When non-ghosts use it, their speed lowers one stage, but they also raise their attack and defense by one. But when a ghost uses it, the move lowers their HP by half, but from that turn forward, the target loses a quarter of its health each turn. Pretty neat, though I always knocked out Pokemon before that would matter. Imagine not having a sweeper Pokemon, jeez. So what's the deal with these differences? The idea behind curses is pretty simple. You invoke typically not good forces to do evil acts upon your target. However, no one is as good at curses as ghosts. I mean, how many ghost stories feature someone's dying breath being a curse on someone, causing supernatural things to haunt them for the rest of their lives, or potentially the rest of their lineage? That's the plot of Castlevania even. But the whole cursing with your dying breath bit may be the logic behind the ghost dealing damage to itself, but now what's with the nail that it always shows in the animation? Why is a curse inherently a nail being driven into someone? Well, it's history time, and time for me to mess up pronunciations. Ushi no Toki Mairi is a traditional Japanese method of delivering a curse during the Edo period. You would wait until a sort of witch's hour, known as the Hour of the Ox, and when the time is right, you would use a straw doll made to look like your target and drive a thick 5-inch nail into it to peg it against a sacred tree near a Shinto shrine. Repeat for 7 days, and your target will slowly lose life until they die. Interestingly, nothing inherently here is about hurting yourself, but I assume that's done for game balancing reasons, like how it takes 4 turns instead of 7 days also, you know? But then, what the heck is up with the non-ghosts doing the old stat switcheroo? Well, It's a joke. No, really. In Japanese, the word for curse is the same as the word for slow, depending on the specific kanji used. So it's a pun, a joke, and one that's lost through translation, unfortunately. But here, I like the idea of the non-ghost Pokemon saying a naughty word, thus cursing, and it causes their attack and defense to raise because they are more prepared for this bleeping battle, but their speed gets lowered to bleep because they got too bleeping focused on their bleeping opponent. Very American-style cursing. Now, Destiny Bond. After using this move, if the user faints, the Pokemon that landed the knockout hit also faints. This works well with the move's Japanese name, Take Along With. It's sorta similar to Curse, actually. However, this Beyond the Grave linkage is much more sinister. Instead of cursing the target, it curses itself to a suicide pact sort of shield. The trope of,
If I'm going down, I'm taking you with me.
which is all the more spooky when it's a ghost that can actually just detach your soul from your body. And meeting up with a Wobbuffet with the move during a no-run Nuzlocke is just the worst! And also, according to Christianity, the way demons see it, they are already damned. So when they're exorcised, they might as well take you down with them, so they are in company. Your destiny is bonded to their fate, good or bad. Basically, at the end of the day, demons and ghosts are petty. Then, Grudge is similar in concept to Destiny Bond. If the user faints, the user's Grudge fully depletes the PP of the opponent's move that knocked it out. But really, why not just use Destiny Bond instead? This is dumb. But remember when I said demons and ghosts were petty? Yeah, they also hold grudges. A typical reason for people to become ghosts or stay around after dying instead of going on to the afterlife is because they have a grudge against somebody. And now it's time to haunt them. Egad, some people can be so petty. Like, imagine being so petty that you ignore your final rest because one time someone hit you with a flail. Yeah, you know, you were almost dead as it was, but the nerve of some people. Max Phantasm is the generic ghost-type attack Dynamax Pokemon use. And on top of ghostly damage, it also lowers the target's defense stat, the Big Spook.
Ah, yes, the maximum amount of fear. Floating plates and stuff. Oh no. What will we do?
Well, be scared, obviously, because that plate is bigger than we are, and it just appeared from nowhere, and it's heading right towards us. All in all, this is just a much bigger version of the move Poltergeist. Floating, ghostly items, slamming around. If you didn't know, a Poltergeist is a specific type of ghost that normally shows its presence through loud sounds and the movement of objects, typically without any reason. It's been exaggerated to a point where in media these days, it's flying pots and crazy noises wailing from nothing. It's your classic haunted mansion with ghosts that just throw kitchen supplies and library books all over the place. And the move Poltergeist follows suit. The user summons some poltergeists, which then grab the opponent's item and smacks them with it. Bonus fact, it's also the only ghost move that doesn't have 100% accuracy. As soon as you ask a ghost to interact with the physical world, they get all clumsy. It's kind of cute. Then, similarly to both of them, G-Max Terror is a ghost-type attack that Gigantamax Gengar use. It's the same as Max Phantasm at first, but it causes the enemy team to no longer be able to escape. Another common horror movie trope, you get locked in with the ghost.
One of you is being taken out. Otherwise, there is no escape.
Now, Lick. There's an iconic Gengar move. I mean, Haunter uses it in the original anime intro. The fame of that tongue. According to the decks, with this move, the target is licked with a long tongue, causing damage. This may also leave the target with paralysis. Fascinating. And strange. Can't most animals lick things? And thus, most Pokemon can? And yet, in the original games, even Lickitung couldn't learn this move. What? So clearly there is more to this move than just a physical lick, otherwise it wouldn't be here, and it turns out the reason it's ghost type is pretty easy to explain. Here's the Akaname, a Japanese yokai that is also known as the filth licker, because it licks dirty bathrooms. Oh, I just shuddered. That's the paralysis. Plus, a load of iconic yokai have their tongues sticking out all the time because it's seen as a very spooky thing. How does that tongue fit in that mouth? Why is it so big and acting as an extra appendage? Is it trying to taste me? Is it going to eat my soul? It's scary and frightening, so you find yourself paralyzed in fear. Oh! Now Hex. This relentless attack does massive damage to a target affected by status conditions, and is called Evil Eye in Japanese, because while Ghost isn't dark-type evil, it's not exactly a goody-two-shoes type either. I mean, most of them don't even have legs. They are ghosts.
That's rude. You can't just say that.
Yet here, we see the move causing more damage if the target is affected by something that makes them more vulnerable. Specifically, non-volatile conditions. Think sleep, confused, or paralyzed. Striking when your opponent is weak is typically an evil move. However, it also is a perfect ghost move, because when do ghosts typically strike? That's right, nighttime, when you're sleeping, or when you're unable to move. Your sleep paralysis demons. When your mind isn't perfectly working, ghosts attack by the shape of the world, creating fear in your own mind. They have an eye, an evil eye for these things. But during the day, it's much harder to get spooked. You're not sleepy, frozen in place, or as confused. Yet, it's still possible to get into your mind, just not as effectively. Thus, Hex still works if you don't have a status condition, just not as well. Oh, and Hex is also just another word that can mean haunt, or curse, or bewitch, and all. Very generic, ghostly acts. What's not so generic is Moongeist Beam, the signature move of Lunala, where she emits a sinister ray to attack the target. This move can be used on the target regardless of its abilities. It's also known as Shadow Ray in Japanese, which is important once you realize that there are a billion ghost-type moves called Shadow something because ghosts work best in the shadows. And you know what casts the spookiest shadows? That's right, the moon. The cause of most problems in the history of mankind, really. The slight illuminator, the reflector of the sun, and the cause of many nightmares, and, of course, the cause of most spooky stories when full. So, Moongeist Beam is just a concentrated blast of sinister light, causing a shadow of terror on anyone who sees it. And it affects all Pokemon, even ones whose abilities would prevent damage, like Wonder Guard, because deep down, we are all afraid of the dark. It's only natural. And just to up the ante, being the signature move of Lunala only makes this beam more powerful, as Lunala is the emissary of the moon, and is representative of all of the moon's powers, which includes the belief that the moon is a portal to the spirit world. So, the spirit world is just blasting you with ghost light. Spook ouch. Then, menacing Moonraze Maelstrom is Moongeist Beam, but charged with Z-power, and that's it. But, speaking of nightmares a paragraph ago, the move Nightmare gives a sleeping target a nightmare that inflicts some damage every turn. And while we're at it, the generic ghost-type Z move, Never Ending Nightmare, is essentially the same, but charged with Z power. And they don't have to be asleep, so it works as a daymare too. But essentially, both moves still work on the same principles. Nightmares. And dreams are hard to explain. In fact, we're still not perfectly sure why we have them, but the theories go that they are helpful for our flight or fight brain system. You see, one of the areas of the brain that is the most active while dreaming, especially nightmares, is the amygdala, which is the part of the brain associated with the survival instinct and the fight or flight response as well. This connection suggests that because the amygdala is more active during sleep than in your waking life, it may be the brain's way of getting you ready to deal with a threat, even if that threat is hypothetical. And that is why nightmares are scary. Your emotional memory can recall fear, but your logical brain is like, what? It was a ghost, dude. Not real. Your brain is just a bully that loves to scare you. Now, Nightshade. Ah, yes, the plant family that is super deadly, and that tomatoes are a part of. No, really, look it up. Tomato plants are poisonous, but so good. Sidetracks aside, the move Nightshade is where the user makes the target see a frightening mirage. It inflicts damage equal to the user's level, so it's the same basic principle of most of these ghost moves, really. Inducing fear to create a sort of mental damage. But now, how does fear cause damage? Fear is an emotion we humans are capable of, but other creatures can feel fear too, obviously. Fear is helpful because it can stop us from going to or being in dangerous situations. Creatures that scare us are dangerous. Large, sharp-toothed, mean, predator, huge, forward-facing eyes staring at you, able to see in the dark much better than you, longer hands, bigger fingers and claws, things better than our own weapons, armored skin, all features of monsters in our own world, and even the fake ones in our own mind. And they are all common things that people and creatures are afraid of. And you need not look much further than bunny rabbits to see how fear can kill you. Now, obviously, I'm not going to show you bunnies actually dying this way, but rabbits, especially pet ones, are known to literally become scared to death. One of the main things the fight or flight instinct does is increase our heart rate suddenly. So, if you have a weak heart, it can easily damage the heart, or even cause a heart attack. HP is an abstract way of imagining someone's health in a point-based system anyway, and everyone's health is different, and you can die in an immeasurable amount of ways. I mean, too much water? Now it's poison. Not enough water? Now your body's poisoning itself. Heck, remember when Padme just straight up died because she was sad? Emotions are a part of your health, and your outlook on life can completely determine how well you take a treatment. That's why why psychiatry and psychology are important too. There's nothing wrong with going to therapy, dude. Man up. But at least in the case of Pokemon, they aren't fighting to the death, but just until the other one faints. And fainting is a lot easier to cause when you're scaring your opponent so much. And the more experience you have in scaring people, thus the more experience points, and thus the higher level, the better you are at it. Practice makes perfect. Hence the whole level is the power mechanic. Now, with Ominous Wind, the user blasts the target with a gust of repulsive wind. This may also raise all of the user's stats at once. A gust of repulsive wind? Is that just code for ripping one and letting it go? That's a whole new interpretation on Ghastly. But no, Ominous Wind is a common ghost tale. The wind blowing around objects, trees, and rocks in just the perfect way to whip up a spooky, otherworldly wail. Or perhaps the dead, still air starting to move once you open up the tomb. The science behind why howling wind is scary is interesting. As you probably know, most people are fearful of the things that they were told to, sort of be scared of based on the experiences of their group. We are social creatures, and unless we're talking tornadoes or hurricanes, wind by itself isn't scary, but the sound of a distant howl is. Typically, leaves in the trees and such dampen the vibration of the winds, but during the cold months when trees are bare and spooky, the wind is free to scream, which is likely why late autumn and winter are considered the spooky months throughout all of human history. Is that a distant pack of wolves coming to eat you? Is it a wailing ghost getting ready to haunt your abode? It could very well be. Also, if the move Gust hurts, then a gust with ghosts in it should hurt too. Come on. And all that ghostly wind is probably charging up the ghost-type Pokemon, so there's a chance all of its stats raise. Phantom Force, or Ghost Dive in Japanese, is where the user vanishes somewhere, then strikes the target on the next turn. This move hits even if the target protects itself. Ah, finally! A dive, fly, dig, bounce-esque move for ghosts. The type that makes the most sense for a move where on one turn they disappear and they reappear on the next. It only took until the 6th generation to figure that out. I mean, ghosts are known for turning invisible or just straight up vanishing, disappearing into the spirit world or a parallel dimension. These are all things that define ghosts. Come on, Game Freak! Well, at least with Phantom Force, they got the added idea of it hitting even through protection, right? There's no wall a ghost can't phase through, because after all, ghosts are our own minds preying upon itself. And interestingly enough, it also works on smaller targets better. If the target uses Minimize that turn, it hits them even harder, because I guess smaller things are seen as kids, and kids are weaker to ghost type because of crazier imaginations, more likely to believe in ghosts, more likely to be scared because they don't have as much life experience. Perhaps. Or they're just easier to do more damage to. But now, it's time to enter the Shadowverse. That's right, Jimbo. We're off to the Shadow Realm, where we got a whole bunch of shadow moves to cover, which makes good sense, because as shadows, of course, they are dark, and thus spooky. I mean, there's Shadow Ball, Shadow Bone, Shadow the Hedgehog. All of these things are lame, and so is this. YouTube premiums and freeloaders won't get that joke. Now then, with the move Shadow Ball, the user hurls a shadowy blob at the target. This may also lower the target's special defense stat. It's just a ball of darkness! I guess it's pretty straightforward though. It's just like Aura Sphere or Fire Blast, except it's shadowy ghost energy, which would also explain its odd animation in some of the older games. Thrown projectiles typically don't wiggle around like this move originally, or suddenly stop mid-flight before continuing, but I think its animation in Platinum is my favorite. That's cool. And considering that special defense is a sort of mental defense, suddenly being hit by a ball of spooky ghost shadow? Yeah, my mental defense could be lowered. Then Shadow Bone, the signature move of Alolan Marowak. It does a whack with its Marrow, but this time its Bone Staff contains a spirit, so the move is ghost type. Bonk, go to horny hell or something. Where do ghosts take you? Now Shadow Claw. The user slashes with a sharp claw made from shadows. Critical hits land more easily. It's very easy to explain. Sometimes it's a Pokemon charging its actual claws with ghostly energy, and sometimes it's just summoning a swipe with some summoned ghost claws. Think like Bayonetta's smash moves. Like that. And being both sharp and ghostly means it's really good at cutting vital things, hence the critical hit bit. Then, with Shadow Force, the user disappears, then strikes the target on the next turn. This move hits even if the target protects itself. Wait a sec, this is just Phantom Force again! Oh, but this time it's the signature move of Giratina. Explain yourself, Giratina. What's up with this?
Well, instead of going into the spirit realm, I go into the distortion world, so it's different.
All right, Giratina. I'll let this slide this time. With Shadow Punch, the user throws a punch from the shadows. This attack never misses, and we're about to learn that Ghost came before Dark. You see, Ghost was a quasi-Dark type before the Dark type existed, and Dark is normally seen as evil or a dirty fighting tactics type, someone who would cheat. And while Ghosts definitely cheat, hence the huge amount of them able to learn a load of Dark moves, they also can be helpful. The Japanese see Ghosts and yokai as a two-way street, but basically, Shadow Punch is much like a Sucker Punch, but with more punch. Instead of attacking when the user isn't looking, it just teleports a fist into them. Think like Bayonetta's smash moves, like that. No natural creature would be able to react to something like that, hence the move never missing. No chance to dodge. It's a mean and sneaky tactic, just like Shadow Sneak. The user extends its shadow and attacks the target from behind. The move always goes first. It's a wonderful tool for recovering to the ledge or getting around projectile character. Wait, that's Smash Greninja. Well, Shadow Sneak is the age-old trope of Ghosts hiding in the shadows. And if you couldn't tell with all the shadows in the moves, the sun is dangerous to them. So they typically stick to the shadows. It's a very common trope for Ghosts. And as for why the move goes first, well, you're casting a shadow on your own, aren't you? That means the Ghost is already behind you. NANI? And speaking of shadows, as if I haven't been, with the move Sprit Shackle, also known as Shadow Stitching in Japanese, the user, exclusively Decidueye, attacks by firing an arrow while simultaneously stitching the target's shadow to the ground to prevent escape. I mean, I guess stitching shadows isn't that uncommon. I mean, have you seen Disney's Peter Pan? His shadow needed to be stitched back into him. Wait, what if it was actually his soul trying to go to its final resting place, but Wendy trapped it with her witchcraft? But that's just a fill. Either way, it's messed up. However, instead of stitching the shadow to the target, it stitches the shadow to the ground. How cool is that? Like being unable to move because the sun's energy is being blocked by your physical form and the darkness you've created yourself is holding you in place? That's some creepy supernatural bull honky if I've ever seen it. Then with Sinister Arrow Raid, Decidueye launches like 20 ghostly arrows charged with Z-power at the target at once. Honestly, that's probably the scariest inspiration for a move so far. Like, ghosts aren't real, but nearly 24 arrows flying right at your face? Yeah, you wish it wasn't real. Ouch. Now, Spectral Thief doesn't have the word shadow in it. Oh wait, it does in Japan! It's called Shadow Thief there. It's the signature move of Marshadow. Oh, great, more shadows. And it hides in the target's shadow, steals any stat boosts that they have, and then attacks with a shadowy burst of Ghost. The damaging part is straightforward enough. It's a Ghost burst. But the stat stealing bit could use a little explaining though. It's not an uncommon trope for Ghosts to hide in your shadow specifically, nor is it uncommon for them to haunt you just by taking away your vitality slowly. You're completely unaware that they are there, but they are, slowly absorbing your health away, eating your soul. I mean, that's what people back in the day thought all kinds of illnesses were. Hey, there are ghosts in your blood because we don't know what cancer is yet. Here, do some licorice tea and cocaine about it. I'll go grab the priest. Now, if Marshadow charges this move up with Z energy, it becomes soul-stealing 7-star strike. After obtaining Z power, Marshadow punches and kicks the target consecutively with force. Now, there's nothing really soul-stealy about that other than its name, so I'm going to assume it's punching your soul directly, which would explain it being ghost type instead of fighting type, and I assume getting punched in the soul hurts. Now, why 7? Well, many martial arts have 7 different colored belts in their ranks. Sometimes they mix them a bit so that there are actually more than 7 ranks, but still there are 7 colors. And if you look into the occult meaning of the number 7, there's actually quite a lot. 7 heavens, 7 planes of purgatory, 7 chakras. Many cultures recognized the 7 planets, especially alchemists, those being Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, the Sun, and the Moon. They considered those planets at the time. And supposedly, the soul travels through 7 planetary spheres while heading to heaven. So maybe these spheres relate to Marshadow's 7 spheres attacking your soul directly? I'm pretty sure there's more, but I don't exactly want to talk about Marshadow all day. Plus, we only have 2 moves to go. With Spite, the user unleashes its grudge on the move last used by the target by cutting 4 PP from it. As the name suggests, it's a vengeful move, which is of course a ghostly quality. We've talked about that before, but honestly, this move is hilarious. How annoying is it when you have a really powerful 5 PP move and you use it once and bam, no more PP.
And lastly,
Trick or treat! Ah, the ultimate ghost type move. That's right. This move is the true reason for the season. The user takes the target trick or treating and adds ghost type to the target's type.
Yeah. Much like the other type-altering moves, this move is pretty realistic, but at the same time much more magical than Soak. You see, Halloween is the holiday where kids trick or treat, and it's all about dressing up as ghosts, ghouls, demons, devils, Thanos, and witches. All the things that go bump in the night. And to sum it all up, the tradition was originally called Geising, and it was done on the day believed to be when demons walked among us, and if you were dressed as a demon, they wouldn't attack you, because clearly you are also a demon. Demons is dumb, but there is actually a lot more to this move, but I've decided to have that be a part of another video. This one here that you can check out when it's out. It's all about the surprisingly deep origin of Pumpkaboo and Gourgeist and their signature move, Trick or Treat. Hope to see you there, and until next time...
Never stop using your noggin!